Smart contracts went live on the Alonzo testnet on September 3rd, and unsurprisingly, not everything went super smoothly. Now, that immediately resulted in a bunch of ETH maxis shouting FUD from the rooftops. What's up? My name is Caroline, and this is FUD in Progress, where you'll learn how to make passive income with cryptocurrencies. In this video, we'll look at the latest FUD around Cardano, we'll look at what's been happening over the past couple of days, we'll look at what is actually true, and we'll break it down as simple as possible. Now, before we dive in, I've got some exciting news for you guys. The membership site that Kieran and I have been working on during the last few weeks will go live on September 9th. So we're finally coming to an end, and we will finally be launching on September 9th. It's called the DeFi Academy, and it will be the place to support you on your journey towards decentralized financial freedom. We've got a few awesome spreadsheets ready for you, including an exit strategy, a list of all Cardano projects that is constantly updated, and we'll also share a lot of trading and market signals that will help you time the top. Now, we'll open the membership site up with a super early bird option that will give you a 50% discount. However, in this category, there will only be 20 spots. So if you're interested in getting in very early and profiting from this super steep discount, make sure to go ahead in the description and subscribe to my newsletter. We'll be sending a few emails just before the launch so that you don't miss it, and it will be first come first served. So if you want to get one of those 20 spots, go ahead and subscribe to my newsletter. All right, let's dive in. Alright, so what basically happened was that on September 3rd, Minswap was the first dApp on the testnet to launch on the testnet for people to use to test it out. Right after that, a couple of test users apparently experienced some issues and couldn't actually swap tokens on the DEX. And the tweet that basically started all that is this tweet from Anthony Sassano. So he said the first app went live on Cardano today, and ADA fanboys are finally discovering that you can't peer review your way out of fundamental issues. And so he posted this picture of the screenshot of a Reddit conversation where people said they had issues with it. Now, since that got quite some huge waves, IOHK actually replied to that. So in this tweet from September 5th, they said, over the past 24 hours, we have seen a lot of social speculation, and let's face it, outright FUD and misinformation over Cardano's ledger approach and specifically concurrency. Let's clear this up. So first of all, they talk about a very important distinction: what kind of programming model they use versus Ethereum. Cardano is a UTXO unspent transaction output blockchain, which utilizes a different programming paradigm for dApps than on account-based blockchains like Ethereum. So they then describe why they use this kind of model. They say the specific flavor Cardano uses is the UTXO, or extended model, which we believe offers greater security, allows for fee predictability, no nasty surprises, and offers more powerful parallelization. We'll get into some of those terms in just a bit, but let's just quickly finish that. Then one very important thing that got spread around about that FUD was that apparently you could only have one transaction per block with this EUTXO, and that's definitely not true, so they clarify that next. So dApps are not limited to one transaction per block. By designing your services or applications, so they mean the dexes and all the dApps, with multiple UTXOs, you can enforce more parallelism. This is inherent, and we believe one of the advantages of the EUTXO design as we have implemented it in Plutus. So they then promised that they'll post a blog about this week, and then they also mention a blog post from SundaySwap. So SundaySwap has taken the time and has written a blog post to clarify all that FUD and clarify what's been going on. And I found this article a very helpful walkthrough over the technicalities. So we'll quickly look at that. It gets pretty technical, but we'll keep it as simple as possible. So first of all, there are two more important things that you need to know. Number one, Cardano is built in a special way that is different from Ethereum, and it's basically up to the dApps or the dexes that are built on top of it to make it compatible with that extended UTXO model. Now, if that certain dApp isn't compatible with that model, then things don't work. And apparently that's what happened to Minswap. That doesn't mean that they're bad or anything, it's just that they have an issue and they're now looking for a solution. That's what testnets are for, and that's usually completely normal. Now, just because it didn't work for one dex doesn't mean it doesn't work for any dex at all. It's just that every dex and dApp will have a different solution and a different approach. And according to this tweet from IHK, there are at least 2 dexes where that worked just fine. So they can see here. So you can read here, yes, our approach is a novel one and requires a different approach. A number of developers like Ocampi, Cardano, Maladex have announced they have already identified ways to address this, while others are still working on their own solutions. So that's exactly that. Just because it didn't work for one dex doesn't mean that all of the decks are screwed or that just the Cardano network doesn't work. And the second important thing is that Cardano basically wants to solve the blockchain trilemma, as they call it. Now, that means a blockchain should actually be scalable, decentralized, and secure. Now, it's actually fairly easy to get 2 of those components, but all 3 is really difficult. So that's one of the main reasons why Cardano chooses the approach with the extended UTXO model, because it wants to solve this trilemma. That in turn is why it takes a bit more time for the finished project to be out there, because it's just a lot more complicated than simply getting 2. So for instance, if we compare it to Binance Smart Chain, that has solved the issue with the scalability and with being relatively secure, also being relatively cheap, but therefore it's very centralized. Now, Cardano doesn't want to compromise any of those 3 points, and that's why it's a bit more complicated. Alright, now let's look at the SundaySwap article to clarify a bit more what's been going on. Alright, so we're only going to look at the most important points in this article. I'll leave it in the description so you can read through all of that yourself. Alright, now first let's look at the history. So it says, Bitcoin introduced the world to the notion of tracking users' funds via a list of unspent transaction outputs, or UTXO for short. Each transaction between users consumes some inputs and produces some outputs, with each output representing a bundle of value, some Bitcoin, and a declaration of who can spend it. Now, Ethereum uses a different model that is described here. Ethereum in contrast chose to keep track of a global set of accounts balances. The ledger state is a mapping from address to balance, and a simple transaction increments and decrements account balances in pairs. They then make a pretty good analogy that makes it a bit more clear. So the UTXO model is like cash. So you have some cash going in, some cash going out, and it is tracked by what is left in your purse. The account model is more like your bank account, or more like Visa. So you have some transactions going in, some transactions going out, and everything is balanced and is checked in your bank account. Now, the account model has a bunch of negative side effects. Every transaction must be sequenced and processed in some order, since it is difficult, if not impossible, to determine which transactions may try to touch the same piece of state. If one transaction updates your account balance at the same time as another one, you can inadvertently destroy tokens, double spend, or other nasty bugs. The second issue is that someone has to make that order, and that entity that orders those transactions has a lot of power. So in short, that has basically led to those increased costs due to mine extractable value and front running. So that just means that people will spend more and more on gas fees just to be the first to come in line, basically. So if the miners have to make a line out of these transactions, they'll just take the one that spends the most first and then go down the line. Okay, so next the article talks about some important terms that come up over and over again, so we'll quickly look at that now. So the main terms that you'll probably see are concurrency, parallelism, and contention. Concurrency is the ability for multiple actors to make progress on a task without interfering with each other. Parallelism is the ability for multiple actors to make progress on a task at the same time without interfering with each other. Contention is when multiple actors do actually interfere with each other. Now, they have another great analogy. I find this very helpful to understand what they're actually talking about. So the analogy is chefs in the kitchen. A single skilled chef can work on preparing multiple dishes at a time, switching between them at just the right time. The chef is highly concurrent, so one person is working on several different tasks. Multiple chefs can each work on different dishes at their own workstation. These chefs are highly parallel, so multiple people are working on multiple tasks, but each independently from one another. A well-run kitchen, though, can have many chefs working on many dishes together and be both concurrent and parallel. So that means a lot of people are working on a lot of different tasks, and they're working on the same kind of different tasks. Now, if they start bumping into each other when reaching for a common ingredient, they are suddenly experiencing contention. So that's when it doesn't work anymore. Now, to summarize both the models, the article says, in the context of this discussion, Ethereum is decent at concurrency, terrible at parallelism. The UTXO model is fantastic at parallelism, but could face contention, making it not very concurrent for some protocol designs. So that's where the extended UTXO model of Cardano comes into play. So it says here, Cardano chose instead to improve on the UTXO model enough that dApps themselves could make these trade-offs in between independent operation and centralization. The article then explains how the UTXO model works, but that's very technical. So we'll skip that for now and we'll go straight to the misconceptions, because that's what you've probably seen in the news or on Twitter. So we'll go through that and clear that up for you. So we've got the misconceptions here. Misconception number 1. Cardano is flawed because it only allows one transaction per block. So you might have seen that in some tweets, and so the truth is actually, in fact, it is quite the opposite. Cardano allows many hundreds of transactions per block. Instead, it's accurate to say that Cardano allows a given transaction output to be spent a single time by a single transaction. So protocols that give multiple people access to the same UTXO might face contention issues. Misconception number 2. Only one user can interact with a smart contract per block or transaction. Then again, also not true. The point of contention is around the UTXO, but many UTXO may be governed by the same smart contract. This fundamentally comes down to the shift in thinking from Ethereum, where you call into a smart contract to make it do something, and Cardano, where you lock outputs with a contract, which determine when they can later be spent. So this is probably where the confusion happened. Obviously, Cardano only allows a given transaction output to be spent a single time. Obviously, I mean, you don't want double spending or anything like that. That's why you can only have one transaction per UTXO. But that doesn't mean there's only one UTXO in each block. There can be many UTXOs parallel in each block, and that's why there can also be many different people simultaneously interacting with a smart contract. They then talk more about the issue of concurrency, and for instance, the last misconception is that the only way to solve this is through centralization. They say yes, that's one way, one solution, but there are many other solutions as well. They then go through potential solutions. That again is very technical, so that's more for the developers. And then the summary is a lot less technical again. What they basically say is that the FUD and all the rumors around Cardano Desk have been greatly exaggerated. So what definitely is true is that it has been a bumpy start, like it is probably for all projects that are launching something new, and especially once a big step like this Alonzo mainnet hard fork is coming up, there are always bumps in the road. That's just how it is. And what we always need to remember is that just because a DEX doesn't work, or because there is an issue with a dApp that's working on Cardano or on another smart contract platform, that doesn't necessarily mean that the base layer, that the smart contract platform, is faulty as well. So anyway, after the FUD, the price has actually reacted pretty steadily. It has dropped a bit, but it stayed at the 280 mark. But now the whole market is down, so Cardano has dropped as well. But a quick look at the chart shows us that there's been a pretty deep dip to about the $2 mark. That's actually also the 50-day moving average, and now it has just nicely bounced off. So we'll see where that goes next. But if we look at the BTC USD chart, you'll see pretty much the exact same picture. Yeah, so that has been the case for the whole market today. Alright, so this is basically what this FUD has been all about. So I hope I could clarify it a bit. It's very technical, definitely, but maybe if you want to get more details, go to the description and look at that Sunday Swap article. I think we're still very early on with Cardano, and it's normal that there are bumps in the road. This is what happens. You see, developers find an issue, then they'll find a solution, and it will go on. If you like this video, hit the like button down below, share with your friends, and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!